So I did it again. Wrong size for the cover art. It's okay, if you're curious to what keeps happening, I usually use a preset on IBS that I like. This has like a higher top of it though. My custom though has the custom YouTube size. So every time I accidentally do this, I get these wrong sized ones and they become very awkward to place. It's why you get the black borders on mine, and my character can cover some of it, but it's not elegant looking, and I prefer putting them in the middle because at least having two blacks on the sides is better than just one massive one, in my opinion. But I had fun with this cover art. Oh great, tonight as I hear my ear ringing. That's lovely. Anyway, I had fun with this cover art. Bakugo's eyes though are really hard to do because what I do with eyes is I either take the lightest color from a character like my cat here. You'll notice it's has like the eyes have the light underbelly because they're both on darker things, or I will take the main eye color, example in this case, red, and I'll use a lighter version of it. I can't do that with red because if I do it with red, it looks like pink eye, and I hate that. So I shift it to orange. It still looks like shit though. I have not found an elegant solution for red eyes. I genuinely hate doing red eyes for that reason. Like specifically red. If you're curious to why Izuku's eyes are always like really weird looking in the sense of compared to like how I normally draw eyes, that's actually because they're drawn like that by the author. So I wanted to respect the author's art choice with the eyeballs. So I kind of copy the eyeballs in the sense of I draw them in the same exact style they do. You just can't see the pupil this time because it's small, because he's looking right at Bakugo. Anyway, I've rambled for 2 minutes. This is Black Cats Are Bad Luck, and So Are You, Kid, by Holly, Chapter 15. Classes went well that day. The attention of the class on him had for the majority of it. There wasn't much done that day. As the bell rang for lunch after English with Mr. Yamada, where the class walked up to say goodbye to him before they went off to lunch. The class had walked out of the classroom and went to lunch, though Bakugo remained, sitting at his desk. Mr. Yamada looked at the younger blonde and spoke up. Bakugo, are you right? Why don't you? Bakugo interrupted the man by whipping around and looking at the small cat behind him. Zuko tensed up and backed up. Though he didn't get far as Bakugo grabbed him by the scruff and lifted him to the other's face. Zuko went still, looking at the other's eyes. They were right in front of his face. Zuko gulped as Bakugo just eeped him there, shaking him slightly and growling at Zuko. Why the fuck did you let this happen? His English teacher was panicking, thinking Bakugo was trying to start a fight. But Izuku saw something different. He could see the boy's eyes well up in tears. He could feel the boy holding him shaking. He could practically smell the sadness, fear, and relief from the other. So Izuku shook his head and put a paw on the boy's cheek, which made the boy sniffle and set the other down. Bakugo lightly whacked the back of Izuku's head and grumbled, Idiot, be more careful. Izuku swished his tail and meowed at the other. Meow! As soon as you do the same. The other didn't understand him, but he snorted and pat his head before walking out of the room, leaving the stunned and paled Mr. Yamada in the room with Izuku. Izuku wanted a moment before meowing again. Meow! Meow! To break the man from his daze. He shook his head and sighed, walking over to Izuku. Oh my god, that was scary, I thought. The world seemed to think his English teacher deserved to be interrupted today, because before the blonde could finish, his homeroom teacher slammed open the door and glared inside the room. His English teacher yelped and grabbed Izuku, turning to look at the intruder, before relaxing at the sight of his husband. The raven-haired walked in and surveyed the room. I don't see any evidence or of or smell any of Bakugo's explosions. You said they were fighting? The raven-haired looked at the blonde, who was still a bit shook. Zuko looked up at the other, who held the Zuko out to the raven-haired man. I thought so. I'm not sure what happened, actually. His teacher hummed thoughtfully and looked down at Izuku, who meowed, meow, as if to say he couldn't tell the other. The man sighed and grabbed the small being, taking him from the other. I'll talk to Bakugo then, after heroics. The man then pat the other's head before walking out of the room, Izuku in his hold. The man looked down at him and walked and sighed tiredly. He bounced the boy in his arms a few times and mumbled something to himself. Zuko didn't catch it over the bouncing, but the man laughed softly at his bewildered state. They entered the teacher's lounge, was seated at a table, and given his food. Some hand with blended dried food on it. He ate it, and his homeroom teacher sitting down and opening his bento box, setting another beside him. A few minutes later, his English teacher walked in and sat beside the other, opening the second bento box and digging in. There were a few other teachers in the room, though none of them paid any attention to the men or to Izuku. That was until Miss Midnight came into the room. As soon as she stepped in, she ran over to Izuku and picked him up, cooing in his ears. Ooh! Hello, baby! Have they been treating you well? It's okay to use blackmail. Remember that. Oh, and she was cut off by a white scarf suddenly wrapping around her face, pulling her to the ground. Izuku jumped off as she fell, landing back on the table he was just on. The woman below writhed and screamed through the bindings, while his homeroom teacher kept holding the scarf tight while casually eating his food with his other hand, ignoring the squirming and muffled pleas of the woman on the floor. Zuko sighed and finished his food, jumping from the table he was on to the one his teacher sat at, albeit clumsily. Though his teachers both watched him and were making sure he didn't fall and hurt himself, he padded over to his homeroom teacher and placed a paw gently on the hand holding the scarf that was trapping the woman on the ground. He meowed, meow, and the man sighed, releasing the woman and putting his capture weapon back where it belonged. The woman took a large and dramatic breath as she was released, eyes bulging from her head. She lay on the ground, panting for a moment before standing and whacking his teacher on the back of the head. The man was about to retaliate, but his English teacher stood and pushed them apart from each other, grabbing his bento box and setting it in the sink to be washed and taken back home to be used again the next day. The woman leaned forward on the table and looked down at Izuku. Well, I see he's been abusing you terribly. Do you want Auntie Nem to take you? The man beside her sighed deeply. Now, Murray, I will throw you into a pit of snakes. Leave him alone. The one just chuckled and pat the other's head. Oh, you're just nervous for what Nezu has planned for him while you're abusing your other children. Azuku chose to ignore the last comment, more interested in the first and the man's reaction. He groaned and rubbed his eyes. His English teacher walked back and rubbed the man's back. Nezu's probably going to see if he can communicate with Azuku. Not much more or else. The woman chuckled and shook her head, sitting on the table and gently booping Azuku's nose. He's a smart rat who knows what he wants. Namuri grinned and rebutted the blonde, who was trying to comfort his husband. The man squawked and swung at the woman, who ducked her swing while laughing. Zuko had a good idea of what the principal wanted, and even if he was a human, he didn't think he could tell his teachers. His homeroom teacher groaned and pushed the woman off the table, who didn't fall but instead stood back up and turned to him. And you gotta deal with it if he decides he wants to see if catnip works on Izuku. The man groaned more, so Izuku padded over to the man and curled up in his arms, which made him chuckle and rub the boy's head. Alright then, lunch is almost over. Let's make our way over there then. The man stood and walked with Izuku in his arms out of the room, leaving behind his English teacher who was scolding his arts teacher, who was in turn was laughing. The man holding him sighed and kept petting him as they walked. They eventually got to the elevator that went to the floor the principal's office was on. After a long elevator ride, they made it to the office. His teacher took a deep breath and whispered down to Izuku, "Be good. Let me know if you don't want to do this anymore." Izuku nodded, and the man knocked on the door, to which a cheery voice called through the door for them to enter. So his teacher took him inside, and the desk sat the principal, who gestured for them to come closer. "Ready for our first lesson, Izuku?" He nodded nervously at his teacher and sat him on the man's desk and pat his back before walking out of the room and leaving him alone with the man rat bear thing in front of him. That's the end of the chapter. Azawa, panic. These are the notes. Azawa, panicking over what the hell Nezu wants. Namuri, Lamo, he's gonna corrupt your child with knowledge. Okay, question though, before I finish reading this note. Do I just say Lamo, or do I say laugh my ass off? Do we extend those, or like unless it's understandable, like AFO, all for one? Like in that case, I'm gonna extend it to all for one. They're I think it's a case by case thing. Anyway, next thing is Azawa with a little frowny face, and then Hazashi with a little angry face. Anyway, that's this chapter. I'm very sorry for my rant. Not rant. Rumble. You know what I mean. Anyway, I'm gonna end this now, and we'll get to the last one, hopefully. Bye!